Week 5 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire this week. The first quarterback, Matthew Stafford, the Los Angeles Rams. Stafford, he was on the list last week, and once again, he makes it this week, coming off a monster game it was for Matthew Stafford in that back-and-forth battle versus the Indianapolis Colts in Week 4. So Stafford, when you got stud receivers like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, it's going to make your job easier. So the last few games for Stafford, Week 3 of Philly, 196 pass yards, 2 touchdowns and INT. And then Week 4 versus Indianapolis, the big game, like I said, 375 passing, 3 touchdowns, including a long one to Tutu Atwell to put the game away. So Week 5, Thursday night game here versus the San Francisco 49ers, where we just saw obviously a mediocre Jacksonville Jaguar offense go in there and win the ball game, putting up 26 points. So like I said, anytime you got 2 great receivers, and that's what Matthew Stafford has, it makes his job easier, and the fantasy points are going to be there more weeks than not. So definitely an ad this week available in 57% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback's Tua, the Miami Dolphins. Tua, last couple games, he's gone out there and played good football for this Miami Dolphin team. And he's a guy, especially when he's home, is where he puts the points. I know Week 5, it's a matchup here at the Carolina Panthers, but their defense isn't all that great. I know Tua struggled on the road, and now we know Tyreek Hill, he's going to be out possibly the whole season with a dislocated knee. But Tua, there's a lot of guys in this offense that could get the football too, and we saw Darren Waller step up in the Week 4 victory. So the last few games for Tua, Week 3 at Buffalo, 146 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an INT, 10 rush yards. In Week 4 versus the Jets, 177 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. Tua right now out there in 76% of fantasy leagues. I think it's a decent matchup. And like I said, even with Hill out, I think production will be there for him. And now Jalen Waddle, it's his time as well to step up as the number 1 wide receiver for this Miami Dolphin team. Next head, Jackson Dart of the New York Giants. Dart, he was very impressive in my opinion versus a great defense in the Los Angeles Chargers in the upset victory. So Dart out there in 77% of fantasy leagues, and he's got a lot of rushing upside as well as Dart, even though at times I thought he was looking to run the football a little bit too much. And rush attempts, he had 54 rush yards, the rushing touchdown, and 111 pass yards and a touchdown. The only thing, obviously, Malik Neighbors, he's out for the season, tearing the ACL, going up on a deep ball and just planting and tearing that ACL up quickly and carted off. Some major injuries this week, but Jackson Dart, even with limited weapons, like I said, with his rushing ability and a great matchup coming up here in Week 5 in New Orleans Saints, who give up the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. I still think Dart, especially in your 2 quarterback leagues, can help fantasy owners in a good way, and definitely a guy to add this week. Like I said, even with limited weapons with Neighbors out for the season, I still think he could find ways to get points in fantasy, especially with the rushing ability. And the final quarterback, Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks. So Darnold, he was totally written off coming into the season by experts, and even myself, I thought he was a one-year wonder in Minnesota with Sam Darnold. Obviously with great options in that offense, Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers in the league, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones out of the backfield. But this season, 3 or more games, he's gone out there with at least 17 or more fantasy points is Darnold. Week 2 at Pittsburgh, 295, 2 touchdowns, 2 INTs. Week 3 versus the Saints, 218, 2 passing touchdowns. In Week 4 at Arizona, 242 passing, a touchdown, and 24 rush yards. So Week 5, a decent matchup versus Tampa Bay. This could be a possible high-scoring game between these 2 teams. Tampa Bay does give up the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. And anytime you got a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, and even the veteran in Cooper Kupp, even though his numbers haven't been good at all this season, and he's at the latter part of his career, and running backs like Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet out of the backfield, I still think Sam Darnold could go out there, put up points. And he's been a solid quarterback last season, and so far this year, I think he's been playing pretty well. Available in 79% of fantasy leagues. That's a few quarterbacks I looked at off the wire for Week 5 of the fantasy football season.